Hello, hello. Welcome back to Exploring DC. I am your host, Josh Dobson, and with this show, we are going to explore all the different medias of DC that we can. So far, we've done TV shows and movies, and today we're going to do our first comic adaptation. Visual listeners, you can see Kingdom Come, a very seminal Elseworld story. I am not alone. We have a lot to talk about today. With me is my two co-hosts, Jackson Wells and Jalen Singleton. How are we doing?
Let me tell you, Josh. Today is a really bad day to be a cup of Greek yogurt. You want to know why that is, Josh?
Why?
Here we go.
Because if you're a cup of Greek yogurt, I'm going to the grocery store. I'm going to my local Harris Teeter, and I'm taking you out of the fridge. I'm putting you in mine. And then at my convenience, I will take you out of my fridge. I will put my nuts and honey in you. I will mix you together, and I will eat you. I'm eating 3 to 4 Greek yogurt today. I got one right here. And that shit gives me the energy to do what I want to do, such as reading Kingdom Come.
This might be the first man to clip farm eating Greek yogurt that I've ever.
I'm eating Greek yogurt. I don't know what to tell you.
You love that. You love that last video, bro. I made a Hope Core edit of you complaining about your Chick-fil-A sauce.
I asked to do that.
You want to run it back, Jalen? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Because I just finished the comic like right before this, so yeah. I'm like it's all fresh in the mind. I'm feeling really good. Happy to be here.
That's good. So in addition to Kingdom Come, DC and James Gunn, the day of this recording, decided to drop a load of news, pretty much updating us on every...
I couldn't even keep up, bro.
Yeah, they just kept going.
I was in class.
They have... Every project got some form of update. We're not going to talk about everything, but there's a lot of stuff that we're going to get into. So, let's just start with Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come is a story that came out in 1996, written by Mark Waid and painted by Alex Ross. Alex Ross actually did this art style called gouache, which is a opaque watercolor, and so it's a very different art style than a lot of your traditional comics, and they had to work in that means. And then Mark Waid is a seminal DC Comics writer. He worked on Flash, JLA, Superman, all these big iconic things.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mark Waid's Flash is like one of the most acclaimed DC comics ever, right?
Yeah, that's actually like his work was so respected that when Alex Ross was looking for someone to work on, because Alex Ross came up with kind of the ideas for Kingdom Come, he needed a writer to flesh him out. DC, all the heads recommended Mark Waid because of his extensive knowledge of the characters and then his prior work. But yeah, Kingdom Come follows a pastor, Norman McCoy, who is seeing all these preliminary visions of an impending doom and dark days to come, and he doesn't know what's going on. And then this character called the Spectre shows up, who is essentially an angel of death or life or whatever you be, and he guides him through this new DC universe where we see all these aged up versions of heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and the story follows how all these characters were out of commission and all these new metahumans came into fray, and Superman decides that, hey, we need to curb this, we need to bring more justice and security to what's going on. And on the opposing side, we have Batman, who's trying to do things his own way, and there's all this conflict of what's the best way to move forward in this new era. I think that kind of sums up everything. Jalen, would you say that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, for sure.
What is your guys' history with this one? Because for me, this was a initial read. I had never read this one before.
I think that's the same for both of us, right?
Yeah, I would say it's the same for both of us. I was introduced to it like slightly through the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover.
I was going to ask about this, but I'll save that for later.
Yeah, because I know that Brandon Routh's Superman, even though he was like a returning point from Superman Returns, his Superman was very much based off of Kingdom Come. So I watched videos about it, and I saw like the artwork and stuff, because I mean it's iconic because it's beautiful. Alex Ross did his thing with this artwork, but I had never truly delved in until, today and yesterday, for the podcast, and bro, it was absolutely amazing, stellar.
Yeah,
for sure.
That was my first time reading it as well. I'm pretty stupid apparently, because when I sat down to pick this up, I was like, all right, this is the one where Superman lands in communist Russia, and I realized I got my comics mixed up. That's Red Sun. And also, I just got Greek yogurt all over my Johnny Cash shirt, and I'm very sad. When I started reading this, I realized that I actually had no idea what this was about. Generally, I had no idea. What the fuck? I had no idea like what the deal was with this comic, because obviously it's such an important and historic DC comic. But like, I somehow managed to go all these years of reading comics and discussing comic book media without actually like hearing too much in depth about what the plot of this actually is. So it was a really nice surprise going in and getting to experience all the twists and turns without really any prior knowledge. I really enjoyed that experience. And yeah, Josh, I was going to ask, so in Crisis on Infinite Earths, I know Brandon Routh pulls up in the suit. Like, do they explain that at all? Or is he just wearing that suit?
So, if you guys don't know, I'm a resident Arrowverse expert between the three of us.
He is the number one. He's more of a DC, like a DC TV nerd, like a more of a CW nerd than fucking Eunice is.
Yeah. So I know a lot. No, they don't explain it, and I think they wanted to bring Brandon Routh back as an older Superman, and so they're like, what is the most iconic version of old Superman is Kingdom Come. So they just inspire the suit after him. And that's something that, like, my entire history with Kingdom Come has been just supplemental. I see this inspiring all these things. Why are we reading this? We're reading this because it's inspiring the upcoming Superman movie in some way or form with, like, the emblem and some of the themes. And I never knew what it was about. I just knew, hey, it keeps showing up in these things. Even when I was reading it, I'm like, this is strikingly similar, which I would like to get into later, strikingly similar to Injustice in terms of a lot of the story beats and stuff. And sure. I think it's one of those comics that everyone talks about, but you don't really realize the impact it's had throughout a lot of DC media. What are some initial thoughts, Jalen? You are a big comic reader between the three of us. What did you feel about this one?
Well, I actually, I know when you just made the comparison to Injustice, I was actually going to say that for me, this was a better Civil War comic version, because it was more of, it did a better job at displaying the three superheroes' ideologies, because I know Wonder Woman had her own feelings, Superman had his own feelings, and obviously Batman had his own feelings. And instead of making them clash and fight like how Civil War in 2006 did on the Marvel side of things, it was more of a clash of ideologies and a clash of, ideals, and how do we do this as superheroes? How do we do this, in this world where now hope is lost, and because of the battle with Magog, how do we go about that and still provide a sense of hope for the people? And I really, really, really love that aspect of the storytelling, especially from Superman's point of view, and even from Shazam's or Captain Marvel's. The DC for the listeners out there, the DC versions of Captain Marvel's, his point of view. It was all super duper intriguing, especially looking at Lex Luthor from that businessman side of things, tainting Billy Batson since he was like, a kid, and now making him into kind of his lapdog for his company's regime. Even that was really cool. It was very deep. Like, it was super deep on like a religious level, on an ideology level. Like, I really loved it, man. For sure.
Jackson, how did you, because you said you didn't know much about it, how did you feel about it initially?
So something that really struck me, because the first thing I thought of when it started and they walked into a restaurant that is superhero themed, obviously it kind of made me think of The Boys, but I thought that it handled the world building in a little bit more of a nuanced and interesting way than The Boys. It's not this kind of like overly gratuitous, every superhero is this fucking freak kind of thing. It's more that they just kind of, they're fighting without really having anything to fight for.
That ties into a theme that I've seen a lot, and something that works well in The Boys because of how twisted the superheroes are. But there's like a theme of idolatry with superheroes, and these regular people seeing superheroes, and even the whole conceit of DC that everyone loves is that these characters are gods and they're among mortal people. I think this one does a really interesting approach to that, where it's like, yes, these people are those like living legends, they are those gods. So when they go away, when these young people run rampant all over, like, how does that change the landscape of the universe, and what does them coming back symbolize, both to them and like to the greater DC universe? It does a lot of stuff really well. Something that, like, I think movies like Batman v Superman touched on with Superman, and kind of what Zack Snyder was trying to do there. I think this comic really tackles an aged Superman quite well with what they were going for.
I definitely was a little taken aback when I first, because like I said, I also went into this not really, kind of like Jackson, like not fully knowing what it was about necessarily. I knew that Superman was front and center, right? But I didn't know where he was gonna be to start this story, and then to see that and to see, you know, Magog's destruction, when he split Captain Atom up, and then that whole radioactive wave went across the Midwest and killed all those animals and plants and crops and stuff, and then having that as the setup for the story with where Superman is at this point in time. It was super cool to see a hero who is the embodiment of hope lose all hope, but in a way that doesn't make him just like this evil bastard, you know, kind of like Injustice did, or like, you know, Batman v Superman had the visions and all this other stuff, you know. I mean, because at his core, Superman is still the best of what humanity is. Superman is what humanity strives to be, whether he has no hope, whether he has hope. And I think that that's something that a lot of Superman media, especially recent media, since Injustice has came out, they've tried to kind of paint Superman in that light of like, okay, when Superman loses his hope, then, you know, he just goes on this rampage. He becomes like this insufferable kind of piece of shit a little bit. But I like how this story really delved into why he quit and how he had good reasons for quitting and why he got back in and why he had good reasons for getting back in. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
With Superman, like you look at the Injustice one, which I feel like is the easiest to draw parallels to just because the stories are so similar. Basically, in both stories, the Joker essentially kills Lois Lane, causing Superman to disappear and ultimately turn on a path towards a somewhat fascistic, power-hungry type thing. In this one, instead of Injustice, which is very black and white of like Superman's the bad guy, he is the trying to be a dictatorship, Superman is recognizing what he is doing and the nuances of that. And he's like, is this the right thing to do? And Wonder Woman's in his ear being like, yes, this is the right thing. We need to go to war. I think you're right, Jalen. They handled this in a way that felt a lot more true to the character than a lot of these other Elseworld stories, where it just felt like a natural continuation of who Superman is.
Yeah, that's what surprised me about this, is that upon reading it, there was not a moment where I felt like, oh, Superman wouldn't do this in this situation, you know? And I feel like this is a really essential Superman story, period, because I think it captures the essence of the character perfectly by the end. Where that, you know, that speech he has near the end is just really impactful by the time you get to that point in the story, right?
Yeah.
Another character that I really liked, and I just liked the framing of it, I really enjoyed what they did with Norman McCoy and Spectre. When it initially started, I was kind of concerned. I was like, who is this? Why is this like framing device of us just kind of peering into this story? Why can't we just fully get enveloped in it? Mm-hmm. But I think that having that outside perspective and the way it handles religion and his crisis of faith and all that was really well done. And I appreciated every time we got to check in with them, every time I saw them in the background. I thought they brought a really human element to it while also being like, you know, essentially the Watcher for this story.
That's what it reminded me of, like the Watcher if he was cool.
The Spectre has insane aura. I love that man. He's Jalen, did you like Norman McCoy? Because I don't think he's an original character created for this comic. He was inspired by Alex Ross's father.
He is.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's cool.
Oh, I didn't know that. That is actually really, really, really freaking cool. But he is an original character designed just for this story. But playing into that was also for me one of my favorite aspects. Like that moment. And because originally I thought he was going to be another iteration of Sandman, because I know he was talking with Wesley Dodds, who is like the golden age version of Sandman. So I thought before they mentioned his name, I thought it was going to be like a later version. To see he was this character and to see he was a pastor first and foremost, which I think is super important in the religious undertones of this story. Because God, I mean, like there are multiple panels, there are multiple scenes, I guess you can say, in this story that like speak on the religious ideology of America and about the state that America was in and is in. Even the scene where that villain tries to stop immigrants from making it into America. Like we can talk about that a little later. But
that was timely.
Yeah, back on this. Mr. McCoy, but I think even like his scene where he is preaching to a congregation and he just loses his sermon because he has lost faith, and he apologized. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I've lost it." And he just sits in his in the foyer area, and that's when Spectre comes to him and delivers his vision to him. That speaks to, I guess, on a deeper level of what happens to a lot of people who lose faith in some instances, if people are believers. But I think that for this story in particular, losing that faith in superheroes and losing that faith in metahumans was a really, really, really strong point of emphasis to kick this story off of. But
yeah,
love it.
That's a great point. Religion is like such a topic that I think is very common in these types of stories because of the parallels. You can draw superheroes to gods and then gods to various religions, and it's something that I think needs to be very delicately touched upon, and something especially coming out in the late 90s, you never know, especially with the prevalence of
that's an interesting point. Sorry to cut you off, but like it doesn't feel like a comic written in this feels like something that could have released today. Yeah. And especially like it feels like it could have been a direct response to the evil Superman trope. Do you know what I mean? Because it feels like they give him a lot of the setup that you would give an evil Superman, but they resolve it in a completely different way. It's much more life affirming, I guess, than a lot of these kind of evil Superman tropes are.
And I think its approach to all that is what makes it timeless. Like I
agree. Yeah.
It handles it in a way that you feel like the era of it feels kind of golden aging, like how they designed the world, but at the same time it does feel like something that could come out today, and it does feel like something that fits so well with a lot of what our current superhero media is, because it's the example of how heroes should act and how they should operate in something like this, where you see like Injustice, The Boys, Invincible, a lot of like what they shouldn't do and how it could easily go wrong, and that type of edge.
Yeah, because I think, even just in normal DC Comics as a whole, everyone views Superman as this figure that is larger than life, right? So when he quits, everything just kind of, goes to hell. But when you look at his return and just how, even for McCoy, like how he is amongst these people and he has seen this vision of the apocalypse and he has lost hope fully, completely, and he sees Superman make his return. That look of hope on everyone's face, was a timeless panel. I think for me personally, I know it was a very small panel, but it does show that even when Superman has lost hope himself, he doesn't just turn to being a dictator, which I think every single time an evil Superman has been done is always as a dictator, which just truly goes off the rails of what Superman is to begin with. Like, that isn't even a realistic trail that he would, or path that he would go, even if he lost Lois, which he did lose Lois in this story too. But he just secluded himself, and then when he made the return with his new Justice League, saving a group of immigrants, from a neo-Nazi, like that is what Superman is, But I don't know, man. This story really did a good job of, kind of like Jackson was saying, diverting that path and kind of arguing why evil Superman isn't the way to go in these type of stories.
There's power in that symbol, and that is something that we've known and something that we've been wanting, like this resurgence of Superman to kind of bring that back. This is what we're talking about. This is the Superman that literally means that S crest means hope, because when you see that symbol, it is that like Christ-like figure or deity-like figure, whatever it be, for the DC universe, and it's great to see them handle it with such care back then. And something I'm excited that it's an inspiration for the upcoming Superman, because I like a lot of the themes of what Mark Waid does here, which is just very incredibly interwoven.
And
through
I'm getting
everything.
why it's an inspiration now.
Right.
I was confused at first why they were like listing an Elseworld story as like such a big inspiration, but I think this captures the essence of the character so powerfully that it's making a lot more sense to me right now. And let me ask you, if I could ask you a question, do you think they've never made an animated movie based on this one, right?
No, the closest thing they got was the Justice League The New Frontier movie, but that isn't at all a Kingdom Come animated adaptation. It's just kind of, again, inspirations for stuff like that. The people that worked on the Tomorrowverse, which a lot of people did not like, said that they were planning on working on a Kingdom Come adaptation, but DC Studios shut them down, seemingly because it's going to be inspiring a lot of this upcoming media that they're doing.
Do you think that there's ever... Because I know Gunn and co. want to do more Elseworld stuff. I would love to see this adapted to the screen at some point. I think that would be really cool. Do you see that as a possibility ever?
I think so. I think with the amount of comic adaptations that we got on a yearly basis for the VOD stuff, like we got The Long Halloween recently, we got Injustice as a movie recently, with all diminishing returns because it's direct-to-video stuff. I think going forward, the future of what I'd like to see these comic Elseworlds adaptations would be for a streaming service or for theaters, so we could put a little more time and doesn't have to be like these 80-minute adaptations. Let it breathe a lot more. So I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that they will. Jalen, do you think that they'll dive into a lot of these classic stories beyond just the DCU?
I hope so. I truly, truly, truly hope so, because I think if in a time where our last Superman was an evil Superman, coming off of and James Gunn saying that he wants to go fully into this Superman that is hopeful, that does represent, truth, justice in the American way. I think a really great way to do that is to adapt a story that takes the evil Superman setup trope and takes it in a completely different, more emotional, theoretical position. So yeah. I hope so, for sure.
Another interesting thing that this does is it shows a lot of our heroes aged up, right? And a lot of what they are later in life. I'll start with you, Jackson. How did you feel about, because we saw an aged up Wonder Woman and her animosity. We saw an aged up Bruce and him still being very calculated. Do you feel like these were kind of true to what the other characters were besides Superman?
Wonder Woman was really interesting. I really liked what they did with her because she's a lot more cynical in this than most of the other characters are. But even I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. At the start, she's kind of the one that's kind of like pull Clark back in and kind of get him back in the fold because she thinks the world needs Superman. But as it goes on and the battle gets more and more violent, she kind of slips into that. And I think it's interesting that we have someone on that side of the conflict that is at risk of becoming what they're fighting. And a lot of what they're fighting isn't just pure evil. It's people who are fighting without a cause. They're people who have kind of forgotten what it is to be a superhero.
With Wonder Woman, it's one of those things where I wonder, because they mentioned that she gets kicked out and replaced in Themyscira and her heritage. I'm wondering if her behavior in this, which is very warrior-like and very...
It is.
We need to go to battle right away. Is that a response of like, hey, these people rejected me. I need to be more like them for them to accept me in whatever way, shape, or form. And that's why we get the personality shift that we see in Diana.
And I think it's really interesting. And I think the way it's written is quite nuanced. And I think the way that they resolve her character at the end is really cool, too. And on the topic of Bruce, I think that he is probably the most similar to how he is in his prime, albeit a little more willing just to allow people to blow up.
Yeah.
He's not willing to pull the trigger, but he's willing to let it happen. But I like that they kind of make a point of that. They say, all right, this is kind of where Bruce is at now. They give you reasoning as to why that is. And I think they handled all the big three really, really well.
It's something with Bruce that I found interesting was that, again, it's another story of an aged up Bruce where Gotham has become kind of a safe haven. It's not a very crime-filled city. And something we saw recently in The Flash, of all things, with Michael Keaton. I think this one handled it a lot better, of where he's not just like lamenting and in sorrow. He's still trying to be out there. But now he's got this like power complex where he feels like he needs to control everything and be completely in charge, which feels very Bruce with when you look back and look at all the tactics he's made to defeat the Justice League and his own teammates. It feels very in line with where an aged Bruce would feel like he needs to step up because he's not physically there anymore.
You know what this reminds me of, Kingdom Come? It reminds me, and this is going to sound weird at first, but it reminds me of Logan. Just a little bit. In the way that it's like slightly dystopian. Mm-hmm. It's not like hundreds of years in the future. But it's slight. There's just a slight dystopian feel to it that I feel is a bit akin to Logan. And even the way that kind of superheroes are revered in the world of Logan, the little bit we get to hear about it, it feels a little similar to Kingdom Come. That's just something that kind of crossed my mind right now that I thought was a bit interesting. From a world building perspective, because I that is something that kind of struck me right off the bat, and I know this is a huge topic change, I'm sorry. It did strike me just how off everything felt, you know?
Yeah, where the world feels somewhat right.
Apocalyptic almost, yeah.
It feels somewhat right, but it also feels dystopian. And that's where they combine the golden age kind of aesthetic with a dystopia that makes it really interesting. Because when you normally see a dystopia, it's very, dark, gloomy, blacks and blues and all this stuff. And this one was like, hey, everything's light and sunny and everything's bright. But there's also people mass murdering, and literally millions of people get killed in Kansas. And it was an interesting one. Like, Logan did take a similar approach where it was a lot of day scenes and a lot of, I don't know, not very apocalyptic in the traditional sense. Jalen, how did you feel about the world building and everything? Did you feel like because they throw every DC character in the background that they possibly can. It feels very populated.
Everybody was there.
They do. Even like to see Dick Grayson's transformation into Red Robin, like that was really cool.
Yeah.
The restaurant?
No, he was standing on the podium. Wait. Oh my god.
That was cool.
yeah. The restaurant, Jackson, for sure. But
I could go for a milkshake. This shit's fire.
But yeah, like to see all of these heroes' transformation, to see Wonder Woman turn into that more cynical hero due to her being outcast from the mascara, or you see Bruce becoming more grizzled than he already was, but still having his ideology of like no killing. But if something happens, I am more apt to let it happen. You know what I mean? Or seeing like how the Flash is now, where he's just like legit a blur, where he's just in everywhere, like he's so fast that he moves everywhere at once. You know what I mean? Like, even seeing that was like super duper cool. And also like the villain being Magog, who is a Justice Society villain. That was a deep pull for me, especially as like a DCAU fan, and seeing people like Captain Atom and Magog and all these people in a very populated DC universe that actually takes a hold in what the story is and what the story could be. I really fucking love that.
Magog was a character that it's Magog, right? Not Magog.
Magog, yeah.
I say completely, yeah, Magog. It's a character that I was somewhat familiar with, but very tangentially. I had no kind of idea, and so kind of when they are bringing it up, when Superman and Wonder Woman are talking initially, and they're like, he brought you away for 10 years. I was like, what is the setup for this character? What are they going to do? And I felt like it was really interesting how they took him and made him the face of these new metahumans and this new regime. And the scene of him attacking Superman in Kansas and then his pure guilt afterwards, I thought was a really powerful moment that I wish I actually got more of him, because that scene really took me away.
It did, especially like just him on his knees with Superman in front of him. Like, that was such a powerful moment, like just like wanting penance for what happened and showing regret, especially because Magog is a very powerful guy, in DC Comics. So to see someone that powerful on his knees in front of someone who's even more powerful, or actually a little less powerful in some senses, like that was really, really, really powerful. Like that is my one thing that I wish they did more of. Not in like a critique way or anything like that. The story is still excellent, but like I would have just absolutely loved if they just delved more into that regret and into more of that seeking penance, because that could also go into like the religious angle side of things too. With Spectre and with Phantom Stranger,
It goes back into the eternal superhero theme of legacy and living up to old standards and old ideals. That's why we see legacy characters constantly pop up. And it's just Magog being like, hey, I see you, Superman. I see you as this symbol of peace and hope and everything. I can do better because I can take it past that next step. I can go where you can't. And then he ultimately realizes that's not the point. Like, there's a reason that Superman doesn't kill and doesn't stoop to that level, because you end up on a very dark path. And again, just very great stuff. There's not much more I can really dive into than just being like, this was incredibly written. There's a reason it stand the test of time, and I love that it's permeated throughout all of DC, and I've seen these influences now, and it makes a lot more sense.
And I would say, like, this is just one of those comics I feel like everybody should read at some point in their life if you're a comic fan. I think that this is, like, one of those... And there aren't many that I would say that about, but I feel like this is those, like, must-read comics, you know, kind of like I think the Jason Aaron run of Thor is, or the Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye, or, you know, some of Frank Miller's work on Batman. You know, stuff like that that I think is, like, really essential to read if you're into comics.
Yeah, it's such an isolated piece, but one that it really tells a lot of what we want to see from superhero media and a lot of what it's inspired, especially this new age of deconstruction and looking at old heroes and stuff that we see a lot in pop culture. We see a lot of, like, hey, let's go back and revisit this old thing, and what is it now that it's old? I mean, how many legacy sequels do we see? This is the original legacy sequel in a sense of, like, we're taking these iconic characters and aging them up and deconstructing what their core essences are in an entirely new world.
That's what it does, like, so well too. Like, it is truly an amazing legacy sequel, you know, because it does take these characters and it puts them not it and this is what I was trying to find earlier. It doesn't take them out of character at all. Everybody who you see is still in character with who they originally were 10 years prior, or at least the versions of them that we know. And I think that is what's so great about it, is that this is more than just a brawler DC story. This is a story about keeping the hope alive. This is a story about, you know, staying strong with your ideals, no matter if everyone is telling you to move. You know what I mean? Like, and this is also a story that could very well be told today and would still be just as powerful if it released today as it did in the 90s or whenever it released originally. But
right.
Yeah, definitely something that everyone should read, for sure.
Jackson and Jalen, I wanted to get both of your guys' thoughts on kind of towards the ending. There's this big moment where the UN is like, it's kind of similar to the end of the Avengers, right? Where they're like, we're going to take it into our own hands. Let's nuke them, right?
Yeah.
And so the end of the thing
is what it reminded me of. It reminded me of the Avengers.
But instead of a giant wormhole opening up and being able to save the day, they're faced with a choice of, hey, we can either stop these nukes and this problem keeps going. Everything, the cycle keeps going, or we can end it right now. And Superman gives it, there's a long build up to why he's fighting a brainwashed Captain Marvel with Lex Luthor doing his classic Lex Luthor schemes. But he brings it up to Captain Marvel of like, hey, you're the cross between gods and humans, you decide. And they end up nuking the vast majority of DC heroes. How did you guys feel about that decision? As it's a big one. I think it
led
radically
to my
changes.
favorite line of the comic, I think, where Superman is talking and he says, you know, he chose life. And I thought that was a really beautiful moment. Even though like most of them fucking died, you know, Billy tried to save as many as he could.
Saying, yeah, he chose life is very powerful. Like that definitely was a scene that gave me chills, because it is that thing of ideology rising above all, especially with this ideology and with where this world is at in this current time. I loved that line and loved everything. It did take me by a shock though, but yeah, absolutely loved it.
It's one of those things. That moment was, a lot of people apparently have said, if DC had a true canonical ending, this is what I would like it to be. This is how I would imagine how these characters kind of age up and ride off. But Mark Waid has talked about, no, this is a cautionary tale. This is how we shouldn't have things get to this point. And I think that was a really interesting way to take it, because there was a sense they could have just defeated the new superheroes and then Superman, everyone stays in power, and it kind of buys into the whole fascism and a state run by these heroes. But no, it's like these people do not need to have all this power over the entire collective. This is like what happens when that power goes unchecked.
I think kind of like that last scene in the diner emphasized that a bit too.
I was very confused where they were going with that epilogue at first, because I was like, okay, I thought we wrapped everything up. Where are we going here? I thought it was a really nice piece, and it kind of plays a lot into the feelings at the time of like, this is the DC Trinity. We need to honor these specific three heroes, and I think they did a really good job.
Yeah, especially that last shot of them walking out, and it kind of silhouettes them. Which, by the way, the art in all 4 issues, stunning through and through. Alex Ross is one of the best to ever do it.
That's something that everyone talks about. Like, Alex Ross is the comic book artist, right?
He is.
And I was like, how did he create these images and stuff? And to hear that he painted it instead of drew it makes so much more sense, because it's like it looks like a painting.
It has a very... That's what I thought when I first looked at it. I was like, this doesn't look like it was drawn. Like, I'm no expert, but...
They had to go out of their way to get the words printed on these artworks, because it required a different style to get the lettering on and everything, because of the gouache watercolored method that he used. He came up with that method, and he came up with this style before the story was formed. And Mark Waid was originally not going to do the comic, but he saw the image of Superman putting those glasses on towards the end again for the first time. He's like, I need to tell this. I know where to go. It shows the power of Alex Ross and his art, and there's so many images. Like, Jalen, you talked about the image of Superman on the bridge, or even like the image of Superman, all them flying in for the first time at the Statue of Liberty. You could frame
half the panels of this series on a wall, and it would.
Yeah, you could. Which,
like, I'm not even exaggerating.
even as like a even as like a creative, you know what I mean, and even as someone who wants to tell stories. I mean, obviously we're filmmakers, so it's like, as someone who wants to tell stories, even just listening to Alex Ross be like, he sees the he sees the panel of Clark being handed the glasses and putting them back on by Diana. And he's like, okay, it's all figured out for me now. Like, I know exactly where I want to go to end up at this moment. That's such a like that is such a cool thing, where it's like one moment can tell an entire story, or one moment in time can tell an entire story of a superhero or just of a person in general.
That really was a legacy-ass sequel moment, wasn't it? Like,
yeah, it was.
That was really a legacy sequel moment. Like, if they were to do follow-up to like an older Superman movie, they would do that thing where they have like this dramatic reveal of him putting the glasses back on. And that's not a knock on that moment in the comic at all. You mentioned that this was the original legacy sequel, and I couldn't stop thinking about just like some of the tropes that it shares with that.
The legacy sequel that earns those moments, that earns that imagery, where it doesn't feel like we're just milking, because it's not milking anything. It's an entirely original story that's just drawing upon all this source material. It's the thing with the art is that you can have comics that have outstanding writing and mediocre art, or vice versa, where it's like you have these awesome artists working with whatever writing. This is one where I truly feel like the writing and the art were both on equal level of unmatched and just stellar work, and it creates one of the most iconic comic books of all time. I love the art, I love the writing, I love a lot of the themes. I'm excited to see how this plays into Superman, even beyond, like, there's talk about how it's the Justice Society in the Superman movie, right? Or is it the Justice League of America? That
I think
this new team of heroes.
I think they said it's the Justice Society.
It could also be the Terrifics.
Right. Regardless, it's a new team of superheroes, and one of the things that we've heard maybe is that they've bought into like merchandising and selling themselves out to Maxwell Lord or whatever company.
You say, because didn't Maxwell Lord make all their suits?
Right. And I think there's a little moment of Superman destroying some merchandise when he goes to, I think, to the villain's little hideout place, and he's like, you shouldn't be idolizing us like this. And that's something that I'm curious to see how, if that is a thematic element that ties into the new Superman of, like, again, idolatry and that symbolism and what everything means, and Superman bringing you back to, like, I'm not meant to be a god or anything. I'm meant to be one that's just helping you out, like a friend, as people say.
It was just beautiful. Just a beautiful freaking DC story.
I loved it. This was one of the goals with this podcast, like I've said the past couple of weeks, is to get into reading comics, and this was the perfect one to get me back into it, where I'm so excited to do whatever we have planned next for comics and going forward, and especially diving more into Superman comics to get ready for this movie. I think there's a lot to explore here.
So I guess to end on that note is, if you are also thinking about if you should pick up comics, and if you want a good place to start with DC, I would actually say that you could start here. Honestly, you could just buy, go, because I mean, most everybody knows Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and that is who the story mainly follows, and by also introducing another protagonist who has not appeared in the main DC timeline, who was created specifically for this story, you could legitimately pick this up as your first DC comic. So I would highly recommend it.
I agree. It works very well as its own thing, and then it gets you excited about, like, what were these people in their prime and what was that world like. We have a ton of news to get into.
Dude,
DC.
I was watching the Andor trailer on repeat. I was eating one of 4 bowls of Greek yogurt I ate today, and I feel like every fucking 5 minutes I like refreshed my Instagram feed. There was like a new piece of news.
Oh yeah, it was they kept
crazy.
coming.
There was so much.
So what happened was last week there was a press conference where they brought a small group of journalists together, and they kind of updated everyone on the DC slate for the first time in a couple years, because last time we got a big DC slate update was that initial video of, like, here is these 10 projects, chapter 1, gods and monsters, all that jazz. This is where they kind of went over some stuff, just fielded a bunch of questions, confirmed a lot of projects. I will kind of just go over everything in that article, and we'll kind of break it down piece by piece in our initial thoughts. There are a couple things I wanted to get into before we get into that. Just a few quick off the tops. One, Colin Farrell won a SAG award for The Penguin last night. He's been racking up awards left and right. I think right now there is a clear path for him to win an Emmy here for The Penguin. I don't see what else would be stopping
When are the
him.
Emmys?
In September.
Okay.
Oh wow.
And
So, wait, that's right, because it would have missed this year's Emmys, wouldn't it? Or like the last round, yeah.
yeah, it came out.
Because Emmy
afterwards.
cutoff is at the end of May.
Right. So
Okay.
yeah, it's gonna show up in
I
September.
agree with you. I think that he is definitely a clear front runner to win that.
I'm curious to see if The Penguin will show up as Best Limited Series, because we haven't really seen that a lot. And I'm curious to see if Kristen Milioti will show up, because she has not been winning a lot, but I think
she should be.
She has the potential now, especially that this Baby Reindeer show, which racked up a ton of awards, is out of the way. I think there's a very clear path. We're not going to see a lot of...
ridiculous in that show. She's so good.
I don't think we're going to see a lot of DC shows winning on this level, so I'm excited to see the Penguins awards run,
And it's the same thing with Marvel. You don't see, like... Even Daredevil didn't... Which you can debate that it should have, but it didn't even win. Because I don't think a single acting nomination came out of that show.
No.
If I'm recalling correctly.
Which is a crime.
So this is rare for comic book media. I think Watchmen was really the only other one to kind of get this sort of love, right?
The 2019 Watchmen from HBO. And that was a very different project again. That was
That's
not
hardly a comic book project, yeah.
It was a very original concept that they created. So I'm curious to see. I'm optimistic that more shows will get that awards love and be on that prestige level, but I'm excited that The Penguin is breaking that, because it's just not something I'm used to seeing as someone that's followed DC television.
I know this has got to be weird for you, right?
It's insanely weird to see a show be like perceived on that level, especially for a character like the Penguin.
I mean, that's how it was for me. Like, I am a Star Wars junkie at heart. Like, when Andor came out and it was like perceived as like this prestigious, adult drama. That was weird for me, because it's like, I've never really seen anything like this in this franchise. And honestly, to an extent, Penguin kind of got me the same way, where I was like, oh, we've never really seen anything like this in the DC universe before. Because, like, while Watchmen was kind of in that same lane, it was so separate from everything. This is in the world of Gotham,
Yeah. Jalen, do you have any thoughts about Penguin just absolutely racking up everything?
Much deserved. Much deserved. Like, it is one of the most perfect comic book media, anything, television shows, animated shows, live action shows, like anything ever put to screen. Colin Farrell's acting, Colin Farrell's performance, how he's able to make you feel that sympathy until the very end where he does what he does. No spoilers for those who haven't seen it, but God, it was so great. It was like, I low-key wish I could go back and experience it for the first time and just binge watch it the entire way through, just to see that entire story unfold. But God, much deserved. And Christian Milioti should definitely be winning more because she is a scene stealer.
Another DC show that we already talked about in the very first episode was Creature Commandos. The concern with these streaming shows is always that it's going to take a few years to get the next season going. The showrunner came out and said that season 2 is being fast-tracked, and I believe him. I feel like this show is going to come out towards the end of either this year or the beginning of next year. I feel like it's going to be
it's going to be that quick?
Year.
I think it'll be a quick turnaround. I think with animation...
That he said it was fast-tracked, but I didn't really get a gauge of what that means, to be honest with you, because it's like, we've seen with Invincible that it's like a fucking near 3-year turnaround time or some ridiculous, amount. I would love that. Dude, I would love for it to be a yearly thing. I miss yearly TV.
I don't see that gap happening. Especially with it being a part of the DCU and them trying to get this off the ground, and with all the problems they had with Peacemaker having that big gap, I think James Gunn kind of knew ahead of time that I don't want to, even he was talking to Dean Lorey about, hey, should we do a Creature Commandos movie or whatever, and Dean's like, if you bring my team back, we'll do a season 2, we'll do it like this. I think they've already been working on it for a minute. And
so here's my question then. Do you think that season 2 was already greenlit and underway before season 1 even started?
I think so. In some way or form. I think they were already, maybe not fully in production, but they were already having scripted out ideas and everything going, and I can't imagine animation is going to take 2 years for them. Based on the animation that I saw, which is really great, but I don't think it's Arcane or anything that's going to take all this time to develop. So I'm optimistic. I think it's going to be a quick turnaround.
I wouldn't necessarily go to say that it would be the end of this year, but I could see mid next year.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I guess that'll be all depending on if they've been working on the scripts, if they've already done voice recordings and all that other stuff, which, seeing as it just came out and they didn't know how well it was going to do to open up the DC. I mean, I would assume just from a business perspective, they would want to play it a little bit more safe before just going ahead and greenlighting a second season since we are.
Yeah, but at the same time, that's the first thing Gunn did when he took over the studio was greenlight this, right?
Right. In early 23. So this has been, they've known this is going to be part of their plans for a long time. I can't imagine in some form they didn't plan for having a second season done in a timely fashion. And that's what these comments kind of signal to me. The last quick one, it's something that we might cover later on. Batman Ninja was an attempt by DC to kind of do anime. They did it last year again with a Suicide Squad isekai anime. And now they're doing a follow-up. The last one came out in 2018, so this is 6 years later. Batman Ninja vs. Yakuza League. A little trailer drops. It just shows a lot of the Justice League in there, a lot of Yakuza. It's made in Japan, so it's kind of cool to see DC done in that art style. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on it. I'm excited to see it because I always like when DC experiments with new art forms, and I'm curious to see. Even though I didn't love the last one, I think once they strike gold with this anime format, they can really make something work.
I mean, I think it's always interesting to see, experimentation with different sorts of art styles and even coming out of different countries is pretty cool.
I didn't watch the first one, Batman. Well, I did watch it, but it was very, 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 very long ago. When it first came out,
same.
So I barely remember anything from it. But I mean, it looks cool. I mean, I'm always down for more superhero anime to kind of play with that, play in the toolbox of that art form. So I'm excited for it. And I'm excited for us to talk about it on the pod. So yeah.
Let's get into this whole article. There's a lot to go over.
Boy.
I'm just gonna go over each bullet point, and I'll run for each of you your quick thoughts on everything. First off, this came out kind of late, but there's going to be some crypto shorts. There's going to be 4 shorts released seasonally. I predict this will be very similar to the I Am Groot Disney Plus shorts for Marvel, and there's not going to be much to talk about there, but I think I'm excited to see whatever they're.
Do we know when they're coming out?
The first one comes out in the fall, and seasonally means I think it's going to be fall, winter, spring, summer.
Okay.
So spaced out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because weren't they describing him as a bad dog or something like that? Like there's going to be crypto getting into a bunch of mischief.
Shenanigans.
Right. Yeah, shenanigans.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very simple but very cute. The other things they announced were they're still keeping up with animation and keeping up with the young adult animation. And they announced 3 new shows, all leaning young. I don't think any of these will be part of the DCU, is the implication I got. The first one is called My Adventures with Green Lantern. It's obviously going to tie into the My Adventures of Superman, whether it's like just a similar format or if it's in the same universe or whatever it is. Jake Wyatt, the showrunner, is producing it, and it's going to follow Jessica Cruz in high school, who gets the ring and all the good and bad that comes with having a Green Lantern ring and getting connected to O and all that. Jalen, you are the guy that I know loves Green Lantern. Are you excited for like a full-fledged animated show? Because we haven't had that since the 90s or the zeros. It's been a long time.
We haven't had a full-fledged Green Lantern show since 2011, and that show is, as a Green Lantern fan, that show is epic and amazing. But when you sent this news in our group chat, I was jumping, bro. I was sitting near my girlfriend, and I was like, oh my god, like we're getting new Green Lantern content aside from lanterns. Like I am freaking excited. I am interested obviously it's called My Adventures with Green Lantern, and obviously it'll be a part of the same universe as My Adventures with Superman. I wasn't under the assumption that they were doing any more universes aside from the Batman and the main timeline, so I'm interested to see like what the idea is there. Are we doing like a new DC animated universe of sorts, starting with this whole My Adventures and kind of aiming for that younger, middle, like teenage demographic? Or will this, just be another show, and whenever the showrunner has new ideas, they just throw a series out there, and it's not like super uber connected like the DCAU. But overall, man, I was hyped, especially to see that it follows Jessica Cruz, who is one of my favorite, especially after the movie that came out in 2019 called Justice League versus the Fatal Five, which is set in the DCAU. Love Jessica Cruz.
Jackson, how about you?
I love Green Lantern, and I think there's always just been kind of a lack of Green Lantern content on the screen, and I really enjoyed what I've seen of My Adventures with Superman, so I'm down to see more stuff in that style.
My Adventures of Superman, I've talked about it. I adore that show. It's probably my favorite ongoing DC show, because I don't think the Penguin's an ongoing thing as of now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it's my favorite. It captures the essence of Superman, again, like we've talked about a lot, and what I love about the character. And it feels like a lot of the shows that I grew up with on Cartoon Network, like those Ben 10s, those Teen Titans
really
2006.
does.
And that's why I probably adore it, because it just reminds me of the type of animated show that I used to absolutely consume. This gets me so excited, because I think Lanterns is going to be more of an experimental Green Lantern show and take things in a different direction. So to get a very classic staple, like this is Green Lantern, we're going to explore the lore and explore everything about her and the mythos, that's what I'm excited for, to just get a traditional. Because a lot of the Superman shows we've gotten, Superman and Lois, Adventures of Superman, have explored Superman mythos in a way that the movies can't. And I'm hoping this does the same thing. So I'm stoked, man. That was the one that got me the most excited. Like you, Jalen. I'm
so
ready
excited.
for it.
So
Give it to me now.
excited. I need more Green Lantern content in my bones, in my bloodstream.
One that I think people were a lot more excited for initially before kind of like processing it was the Starfire show. The Starfire show,
I have some questions about this one, yeah.
I looked into, I kind of read about it. Again, it has someone that worked on My Adventures of Superman producing it, and it's gonna follow her origin story, her escaping Tamaran, stealing the spaceship, and then going on all these like fun adventures with a couple characters. I don't remember their names off the top of my head. I think one was named Crash or something like that. And they're gonna encounter like space dolphins and all this stuff. It's going to be very, I think, younger skewing, and I honestly think it will tie into a lot of what the character is become with the Teen Titans cartoons. I think it's going to thematically be very similar to that. I don't know where your guys' heads are with that. I'm curious about it. I think if it's similar to, Jalen, do you remember the Aquaman cartoon from a couple years ago?
Oh my god, I forgot that existed.
They did another one kind of like that last year called Beast Boy Lone Wolf. These shorts that released on YouTube. The distribution was terrible, but there were these really like cute little, it was very similar to the Aquaman thing, and it was very cute animated like little short form content that kind of just had wacky adventures. I think Starfire is going to be very similar to those types of shows.
I gotta watch those. Yeah, I for sure gotta watch those. But go ahead, Jackson.
I'm confused. This is the one that I'm a little puzzled as to why it's not in the DCU. Mm-hmm. Because if you watch Creature Commandos, you see Starfire there, so it's very clear that they have plans for her in the DCU. And Gunn has said that, we're doing lots of animated shows in the DCU. So I don't know. at least right now, I'm just a little bit puzzled as to why this one. And also, for the love of Christ, we have announced 3 new animated shows, and not one of them is Wonder Woman. Can we please get on that? Please and thank you.
Hey,
Can
we
get
got
My Adventures with Wonder Woman. Like, give me some fucking Wonder Woman.
we got Green Lantern. That's a start, man.
Hey, we got Green
We'll
Lantern.
get Wonder
That's good
Woman
enough
next.
for me, man.
Yeah, but Green Lantern has at least had an animated show before, bro. Like, she has not had one. That's insane.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of ridiculous that I think it will happen eventually. You gotta be
It
patient.
will.
Man.
I agree with you, but it's like, what the fuck? What's the fucking holdup?
I think this Starfire show, what it read to me, because they talked about how they're producing animated series, right? They've greenlit 5 theatrical films, which is a lot of what they've had in the pipeline.
Did they say which 5 they were?
No, but we could get into that in a bit and kind of theorize. And they said they've worked on a few live action shows, being like Peacemaker, Penguin, Lanterns, all that stuff. And then they said they produced 5 animated series. I think these are 3 of the series that were just already coming out in the pipeline, and DC's like, let us prop them up a little and put it on a bigger pedestal. And I think Starfire was... I just think it's going to tie really into... Because the Teen Titans Go show, as people love it or hate it, it is big. Like, it is. It gets a lot of viewership and a lot of fans, and there's a reason it's gone on for like 500 fucking episodes. It's insane. I think this is going to tie into like that love for that character and stuff.
Well, something I didn't think about until you brought it up was, do you think that these are shows that were greenlit before Gunn even took over?
Not necessarily, because he took over 2 years ago, but I think it's something that was developed not for DCU or DC Studios or anything. I think it's just something that Warner Brothers Animation have worked on, because they posted and they're like, we're excited to partner up with DC Studios to work on these projects together. I think it's something that Warner Brothers Animation is their own separate entity, and they're working on all these animated series, and I think, yeah, it's just stuff that they've been working on. The last one that they announced was called DC Superpowers. It follows students Lightning, Flash, Plastic Man, Aquagirl, Green Lantern, and Terra at the Alliance School for Heroes under Principal Martian Manhunter. This sounds the most like a Cartoon Network show. I kind of already know the vibe it's going to be, but
you can tell exactly what this is going to be based off the description, right?
With that set of characters,
you hear Principal Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, you already know
Martian Manhunter. And you're like, yeah, I know exactly what this is.
Yeah.
But with that set of characters, I'm like, this is exciting for me. I'm excited to see like.
I will probably not watch it, but that's a fun set of characters.
I imagine
I'll probably
so.
watch
But
it
like,
just because it has that DC Studios moniker on it. You know how I am, Jackson.
There
I
you
gotta
go.
watch everything with these little
He
logos on it.
watched What If Season 3, so
yeah, completionism, man. Yeah, it's okay, Jalen. I've been in the DC TV trenches. I've seen every show.
Have you seen every season of the CW stuff?
Yes, except for
Holy
not
shit.
Smallville, but that's something I'd like to see.
I was talking like the prime era of DC.
Yeah,
Every single one.
yeah.
You are a
Holy
trooper.
hell.
You're a trooper, John.
For real.
God. Which I feel like this series and Starfire will be more in line with the DC Superhero Girls
I think so.
animated show. And I think one more thing on Starfire. I think I would have been more interested on that if it was a part of the DCU.
I agragree.
When I found out that it wasn't, I kind of lost interest a little bit. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens when they come.
Yeah. It's all going to be like those initial art styles and that initial trailer of what things are going to look like. But something like a DC Super School is like something they've been working on for a long time. When HBO Max was first announced, Elizabeth Banks was working on a DC Superhero High show, and then they were going to do an Arrowverse Superhero High show called Justice U with Diggle running a super school. This has been something they've been trying to cycle through for a lot. So I'm glad they're actually finally making one to see like
Diggle, I forgot about him. He was in like every show too.
He
The
was
Green
man.
Lantern
He was
of the Arrowverse.
the Nick Fury.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
Yep.
Did he ever actually get like the ring?
No, he threw it away after 3 seasons of build-up.
It's
for real?
Jalen, I
Pisses me
can't
off.
even get into
Pisses me off,
that.
man.
Wait, so did you ever see him with the ring?
No, you never see him with the ring. He never becomes Green Lantern
Then why did they bother?
because they were never gonna continue with him because Arrow was ending, and then the other shows kept going, and they're like, let's bring Diggle back and do all this. If I go right now, I'll be on a tangent. I'm gonna get through the rest of these projects.
Yeah.
real quick, I'll
John
just run
Baker.
through them, and then you guys say your initial thoughts. I'll go Jalen Jackson. James Watkins directing Clayface. It's going to be an R-rated body horror. We kind of already talked about this last week.
Yes.
Speak No Evil guy. I think I'm excited for it, but I wish there was a better, more exciting director.
I loved Speak No Evil. Like, I really, really, really loved Speak No Evil. So I'm excited, and especially the fact that it's going to be body horror. I'm excited to see what this guy does with Clayface.
Yep.
I never saw Speak No Evil, but I hated the trailer. But I heard the movie was good.
It was amazing. It was really good.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Same. I'm glad they talked about it.
I'm excited because now that there's a director, we should start getting casting news. I would say sooner rather than later, right?
They said they're going to film in the summer, so they're.
Oh yeah,
they're gonna,
so it's imminent.
They're going to get going. They're going to get going. Sergeant Rock's kind of been now confirmed because this is the first time James Gunn talked about it on a public setting. Luca Guadagnino is attached very clearly. There was a picture of him that came out with him wearing the DC Studio shirt, and they talked about him in this press conference. Daniel Craig was never attached to star. He was just something that they were floating around as an idea, and it kind of got away in the media, and they're looking for a star right now. So I think I'm excited for it. It's interesting.
I am too.
We'll have to see what they go with.
I want to be a fly in the wall on that conversation on, like, how did this movie come to be? Like, who pitched this? I want to know all the dirty details about how the fuck this even happened, because it's so random on every level.
For Luca Guadagnino, of all people, like the indie director, to go into a big studio pipeline and direct a superhero movie.
Well, also the guy that's probably never made a
interesting.
profitable movie in his life.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe he wants to start getting into franchise filmmaking and stuff. It's something that it always reminds me of Steven Spielberg trying to make that Black Hawk movie or whatever for DC.
You're right. I
back
forgot
10 years
about
ago.
that.
In the
Jesus
DC year,
Christ.
yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, no, that's crazy.
It'll always be this big director wanting to do the most random DC project, and this feels like that. We'll see. It's one that they have a script for of some sort, so they're clearly more along with it than other projects. So if it's good, I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
The Blue Beetle series that was also not really officially talked about is now officially talked about.
I didn't see that.
They're seemingly close to a green light. It's going to follow the events of the original movie, and Manuel Soto is working on it. Obviously, Jolo's on it. I'm excited for it. I liked the Blue Beetle movie, did not love it, but I think he has a lot of potential as that character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. I feel like I really enjoyed the characters in Blue Beetle more than the story or the filmmaking.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see more. I think an animated series is a good follow-up.
Yeah, and I think that this will be the most likely place that we see Booster Gold, and I need more Booster Gold in my life. So.
Well, do you think we see Ted?
Yes, but I don't know if it'll be like a Jason Sudeikis thing that people are all hoping for. I think that's a big get.
That is a big get.
That is a huge
And
get.
especially a few years on from whenever they filmed that. Yeah. We'll see. The Teen Titans was another thing that got kind of officially talked about for the first time. It's being written by Anna Nogueira, who did the Supergirl script that apparently everyone absolutely loves over there. That's a good sign. I'm excited. It's Teen Titans, man. I think this team needs
long overdue.
This team needs a good public reception again, because the Titans live action show and then Teen Titans Go have kind of damaged the.
They're one of my favorite teams.
Yeah, they've kind of damaged the public perception of what the Titans can be, and I think this movie is going to bring it back to what it should be.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I just hope that the roster is more interesting than just the Robin, Starfire, Raven, Cyborg, Beast Boy, or a Cyborg replacement.
Who would you add?
I want to see more Wonder Girl. I want to see more Red Arrow or Speedy or Arsenal or whatever he wants to call himself at this point in his career. I want to see Kid Flash. You know what I mean? Most importantly, like whether it's Wally West, whether it's Wallace West, whether it's Bart Allen, like I just want to see a Kid Flash on this team. If we're doing Damian though, it'll probably be the roster of Kid Flash, Starfire, Raven, Beast Boy, and Damian Wayne. But I just hope they throw in like a wild card.
See, they no Dick.
Maybe in an appearance, but not on the team.
Yeah, so do you think he'd be You think he'd be Nightwing at this point?
Oh, for sure,
Yes,
for sure.
I think he will.
If Damian Wayne is around, he's definitely Nightwing.
They
What
want
about Jason?
They want to do Bat Family is my interpretation of what they're going for, and I think they want to skip to Nightwing because that's a popular character.
Yeah.
So I think they're gonna do that.
No, that's valid. I think that it'll be. I think Damian is a good pull for the team.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to see Cyborg. I would hate to see Cyborg be abandoned in this new DCU. I don't think he will be, but yeah, I want to see Beast Boy. I like to see, I like to see some of the picks that you mentioned as well, Jalen. I don't kind of want that just basic Teen Titans roster. I want to see them throw in a few oddballs.
As much as I had my problems with the Titans show, one of the things I really liked about it is they had that newer team of Raven, Dick, Knight, Starfire, and Beast Boy, but they also had flashbacks to the older team of like Aqualad and Wonder Girl. Mm-hmm. Something similar to that would be kind of cool, where you could see like older versions of the Titans mentoring a new team and bringing them into the fold. That would be my ideal scenario, to get everyone kind of included.
So how young do you think they go for the cast?
Teenagers?
I would say like 20s, like early 20s, late teens, like 18 to maybe 25.
But the problem with that, though, is that they become not teens very quickly.
Right. That's why I think they should be younger. They should lean younger and then age them up as the things go, just like how the team works.
Yeah, well, that is also something that I think we're going to talk about in a little bit because it's part of the news. But if they're doing a 6-year plan, right. I don't think they really have to worry about aging them up too much if they're doing everything in 6 years.
Well, they're not doing everything in 6 years, though, because that's not going to be the end, right? It's going to keep going after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get into that really, really soon. Another project that... Oh, sorry.
If I could just say one more thing on the Teen Titans thing. I just think they need to avoid what the MCU did with, like, Kate Bishop, where they cast Haley Steinfeld, who's already a grown-ass woman.
Yeah.
And you know, like, she's engaged now. Like, in 5 years, she's going to be, what, over 30? Like...
And probably with a baby at some point in the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, you need to cast kids or teenagers. I think you need to make that investment into an unknown actor or actress who you really think can kind of carry this character for a good while.
I think they will. I think there's a lot of young talent out there.
I think they are going
right
to
now
as well. But also, like, I think that's particularly tricky with Robin because, at least in film, they've never really gone for it and shown Robin as an actual child.
Yeah, they've never. It's always been kind of aged up. It's something I think it's going to be a new approach, right? And they're gonna take things new. And I think if Anna did such a good job with the Supergirl script and staying close to that source material, I'm excited to see what she brings to Teen Titans and what her...
And I was about to say, they like that Supergirl script.
They like that Supergirl script.
They really like that Supergirl script.
Another script that they now officially kind of talked about, but they were a little more coy about this one. They were kind of trying to imply that they weren't working on it, but they are, is that Bane Deathstroke movie that's being written by Matthew Orton, who did Moon Knight, which is, not the best... project to have listed, but I think he also had a lot of restraint, with the system and Disney and all that.
Yeah. This
one, I don't know. I it's always been one where I'm like, it's like the definition of like what a 13-year-old me would be like. That's badass, and I still feel like that's the case of, that's cool. Bane and Deathstroke, they're gonna beat people up, and it's gonna be badass. That's my whole take right now.
What do you make this movie about?
I think it would be similar to them going on some Black Ops mission and having to work together or something like that.
Yeah, see, and that's the
thing too. I saw somebody say this is going to be their Hobbs and Shaw.
That would be crazy. I think like this is like one of those movies where it's like if it was Marvel, it would definitely be like a pseudonym for something that's bigger. But I think that with the way that James Gunn and Peter Safran have done things, I think this is actually going to be a Bane and Deathstroke centric movie.
I didn't doubt that for a sec.
Yeah, because like originally I was like, oh, maybe this could be in the Marvel way of thinking, I was like, oh, maybe this could be another name for like a Legion, maybe a Secret Six movie, because I know they're both really prevalent members of the Secret Six, and I know James Gunn said he's always wanted to do the Secret Six. That's like his favorite project, or one of his favorite teams in DC. But at the same time, maybe this could be set up for a Secret Six project with those two as the leads. You know?
You know what
Yeah.
I didn't think about? Is this going to tie into Titans at all?
No, I don't.
With Deathstroke?
I mean, I don't
Well,
think
like-
they're gonna use Deathstroke right away for Titans. I think they're gonna do
You don't?
something else. No, they'll probably go. I don't know what they'll do. They could do Trigon. They could do a new villain, but Slade feels like something that they'd want to build up to instead of just kind of using him initially.
That's fair.
But yeah, I'm excited for it. Even if it's just a buddy cop type of movie with Bane and Deathstroke, those are fun characters to.
Is Batman going to be in this movie?
That is interesting. Will Batman show up in anything?
Because now we're
before
at
his movie?
this is the second Batman spin-off we're getting.
Yeah, and
I
with
just
no
think that's-
Batman
well,
in sight,
That's
seemingly.
that's exactly it. Like they don't
That's
know
a-
who Batman is yet.
That's one we could get into real quick. The Brave and the Bold got an update. Pattinson is
It's-
seemingly still not the DCU Batman. They're going to do their own thing. It's getting a script treatment right now by some unknown writer. It's being handed to Andy Muschietti to help him guide the process of finding someone new. And I found that whole thing to be very strange. I'm curious
I
why
did too.
why he's even getting the script. If he's out, why is he not just out? I don't know what's going on with this movie. I'm wish they would be a little more direct and upfront of like, hey, this is a big character for our universe. Here's how we're gonna handle him. They're being very, very shy about what their plans are, and I'm curious why that is.
When James Gunn was talking about the fact that Pattinson isn't connected, he was using a lot of like language that made it sound like quotation marks. Like, that's certainly not the plan, or like that's like, you know. So I think they may still want Pattinson.
Fucking bro! Right when I thought that it was fucking over.
James Gunn was saying it was like, he was like, yeah, that's certainly not the plan. And then like he said he stuttered. And someone asked a question like of like if that could be an idea in the future, and James Gunn was like, he wanted to answer, but then he like stopped himself and was like, yeah, that's certainly not the plan. You know what I mean? Like putting air quotes over certainly. So I think you know, they may still want Pattinson because they.
Josh, you said it was an unknown writer, right?
Yeah,
What's his name?
the unknown writer.
Yeah.
No, like it's an unknown
yeah,
writer.
he's like,
section.
no, you're not gonna.
Okay.
It's not Matt Reeves.
It's literally, well, no, it's literally not a. Okay, I thought it was like a writer that like had few credits. I was going to look at his IMDb, but so we literally don't know who it is.
No, it could be James Gunn as far as we know.
Well, that's another thing. Is Gunn said he's writing another project right now.
That's connected to Superman, but it's not Superman 2. Maybe it might be a World's Finest.
I-
But I guess we'll talk about that. I know we're going off on like a little bit of a tangent here,
Yeah.
but
It's just a little interesting that Brave and the Bold is being written. Again, I have a hard time feeling like he would string us along this much if they were just going to merge Pattinson.
yeah, because
Because I think I mentioned earlier that I was kind of the belief that they might do it, but
yeah, he did say like the last thing that Brandon said in his little video was that James Gunn did mention that there is a Batman movie scheduled for October whatever 2027. He was like, but he kept it vague on whether that was going to be Reeves or whether that was going to be Brave and the Bold, because they both haven't had scripts that have been turned in yet.
that
They're
is
both
where
in that.
that is where Reeves is slated for right now. Though,
Yeah,
right?
that is
where
what
it's slated
Reeves
for.
is slated for. But like I said, they haven't received a Batman 2 script. They know what the story is going to be about. They just haven't received a script yet. So
I continually do not understand both the Batman 2's production and the Brave and the Bold production. Batman is a character that should be easy to kind of fit into your plans, and I'm just confused where we're going. What is the path? I'm fine either way. If you want to merge it in, that's great. Let's do that. If you want to keep it separate, I'd love to see the Bat Family. Let's kind of firmly decide, and we firmly decide by getting either one of these scripts done. So let's get to work. As
Matt, get in the fucking kitchen, man.
Matt, get in the kitchen.
Stand
is
up.
my big thing. Projects in production trouble. They listed off a few things. A lot of it's the initial slate. Paradise Lost they seem to still be kind of working on, but there's no development update.
Yeah.
Waller is something that they were planning on putting out before Peacemaker season 2. Now
Really?
it's not coming out till
I didn't realize it was supposed to be before.
That was what the initial plan was. They haven't been able to figure out what they're trying to go for and what it is. I think it was supposed to tie into like her being exposed by her daughter and all this stuff, and I think it's something that they might cancel with that one.
See, but like on paper, that seems like a pretty simple story to tell. Like that was like a great teeing up point. You know?
I don't know if it's necessary though. I think you could just fold it into
Interesting.
Peacemaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you would assume Viola Davis is back for Peacemaker season 2, right? I don't think there's been any official word on that, but that's kind of, I feel, a very safe bet.
And plus,
It's just for a little bit, even if it's not a full series thing.
Well, yeah, she
Like-
kind of just showed up in the same fucking room in Peacemaker season 1 where she just sat on a couch.
Exactly.
I figure
so.
they can do something similar this time, to where they just go to Viola Davis's living room and get a couple shots and
film
leave.
something.
But yeah, I don't think this project's gonna really come to
I
fruition.
don't see this one ever
fully.
happening.
But
Yeah,
we'll
me too.
see. Booster Gold is one that they're still working on. They had a showrunner, but he seemingly left the project to go pursue other stuff. There was also that rumor that Kumail Nanjiani, that actor, was attached to play Booster Gold. That got debunked, but I don't really know, again, where this one's kind of going, what they want to do with it. I think it'll be exciting to tie it into like a Blue Beetle show whenever they do, but again, we'll just have to see whenever it comes out. Booster Gold's one of those characters that's kind of stuck in development limbo for DC Media, like always,
Yeah.
you know. So
Which
we'll
I
have
guess
to-
is kind of fitting for the character.
it's fitting for the
isn't it?
character. I remember the end of the Legends of Tomorrow show. Not to side tangent, but he was introduced in the very last episode
I
just for the
remember
show to
that.
get canceled, and I'm like, okay, well, are
I
we
didn't
ever gonna
know that.
see?
That's
Are we ever
funny.
gonna see Booster Gold? Yeah, he was gonna be a full part of the next season of that show, and then they cut it.
It's crazy how
We'll see.
4 or 5 seasons into a time travel show where they literally introduce his son. They finally introduce him after having like
Who's his son?
Rip Hunter.
Are you for real?
Yeah. Did you not know that?
Yo.
Hey,
That's
this is
crazy.
this is what exploring DC is about.
Oh,
Dude,
no.
I did not know he was Booster Gold's son.
Yeah.
I that's wild. Because Rip Hunter, he's like the main captain guy, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You learn something new every day.
Swamp Thing's another movie that they're working on. This one is seemingly stalling because James Mangold is just busy with doing everything. I think this one's still good. It's just kind of on the back burner because of Mangold signing up for every project that he wants to, which is,
I would agree.
you know, an eternal problem with a lot of these directors. But I'm excited to see it. And then The Authority is one that they said, again, they haven't been able to figure out how to work the story, and they're trying to set it up a little bit with Superman. It's this kind of team that's...
Yeah.
I don't actually know fully what they're going for, but they said it's similar to The Boys, of like a commentary on superheroes and being a little darker and a little edgier. I think this is one that they'll... It doesn't seem very commercially viable as a
does
big budget
not.
movie. I think this is one they could turn into an animated project and really get what they want out of it instead of doing a full-fledged production for it. Because I don't think it's going to get off the ground if it's a full-fledged movie.
James Gunn did say, James Gunn and Peter Safran were both like, it's hard to tell this story in a world where the boys exist.
Right.
You know,
that's what I
because they
heard, too.
don't want to retread those lines of like what the boys is doing great. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that may be an issue with things, but yeah, I can understand why this one is on the back burner.
Into Kingdom Come again, and like again, it's just a different approach to superheroes and commentating on the genre. If the Authority is trying to do something like that, they have to find a unique angle to it because it's something we see all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't see how this is commercially viable, but I think an animated series could be interesting, or even an animated movie. Because I think that's an area where they could really kind of fight against Marvel, because Marvel's never really done... I mean, obviously the Spider-Verse stuff, but that's not mainline MCU.
Yeah.
I think having animated DCU theatrically released films could be really interesting, because even the only one we have in development right now is Elseworld.
Yeah, the dynamic duo Robin movie that's coming out. many years from now.
Where are we at with this Elseworlds thing? Is that actually like a thing that they? I mean, I know the Batman universe and I know the My Adventures. Are those technically gonna have this Elseworlds label, or are they just stories?
I don't think it's less of a label and just more of people understanding that these things aren't part of the canon, but they can.
Yeah.
It's something that the Marvel side has always struggled with, trying to branch off into projects that aren't related to their MCU because it's so dominant. I think DC is trying to firmly establish, hey, we're gonna do all these other shows and all these other universes. Go watch Harley Quinn or whatever.
Yeah.
You know. We have 3 more things to get into that are all just kind of related to their broader thing. The first one we talked about earlier, they had a quote that said, "We greenlit 5 theatrical films, made 3 live-action series, producing 5 animated series." I think to speculate in those greenlights right now, we have Superman, Supergirl, and Clayface all slated. I assume the Batman is the 4th one. I don't know, because they're talking about DC Studios, not the DCU, the broader. So their 5th one is probably that Sergeant Rock. I don't know. It seems like the 5th thing that's closest in development. I don't know. It goes back to what they said. They need the good scripts to get going, and I think they're sticking with that as of right now.
They said 2 movies or 3 movies?
They greenlit 5 theatrical movies so far.
I'm saying per year, right? Like they said how much they want to do a year?
Yeah, I can get into that right now too.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
They said their annual goal at some point is 2 live-action films, 1 animated film, 2 live-action series, and 2 animated. This is one that when I initially saw it, I was like, for the DCU, you're going to follow the MCU problem or whatever, right? You're going to put out too much. I don't think that's what they were talking about. I think that they were saying is that our DC Studios label, which is going to cover My Adventures of Green Lantern and Starfire and Dynamic Duo, is going to put out 1 animated film, 2 live-action films, 2 animated, 2 live-action. I think that's what they were saying. Even if you look at this,
too bad.
You look at this year, they have at least one animated film coming out, the Batman Ninja movie, 1 live-action film, and then 1 live-action series, and then a few animated series. I think that's what they meant, which makes a lot more sense to me.
As soon as I found this out, Josh, I'm obsessed with lists, and I'm obsessed with like how things play out in total.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and wrote down, because one, I do think this is a lot of content just that the DC Studios label will be on. But if it's not all tied to the DCU, that makes sense. But I went ahead and had a list of the stuff that we know about and the stuff that's been speculated. So as far as like the 2 films, I know we got Clayface and Supergirl, right? And then I know there's 1 animated film that they want to do, which is untitled right now. We have Lanterns as one of the live action shows, another live action show that's potentially untitled, and then the 2 animation shows could be Creature Commandos and based off of what Zolo Marinweta said, maybe Blue Beetle.
I will say, when I first saw this, I kind of had the same reaction you did, Josh, where it was like, you're doing too much here. But I think if you're getting, I remember I was going to ask, does the stuff like the Batman Ninja movie count towards their animated movie, or are they only counting like theatrically released?
I don't know. That one doesn't have the DC Studios label. I was just using it as an example of like, we're gonna have stuff that's DCU and non-DCU, and they're just this their overall.
Yeah.
They're using it as a production label more so than a franchise thing of what we're gonna put out.
Okay.
Which makes a lot more sense to me than. Because Marvel Studios only puts out stuff related to their universe, right?
Yes,
Where DC Studios is putting out stuff not related to their universe. So it makes more sense for them to be able to branch off and be like, hey, this animation studio can go work on this, and they don't have to be constrained to fitting in a certain time frame. That's why we can put out this stuff.
They can just kind of do their own thing. I get
you. So, I'm not worried about any of what they said. And then they also said the thing that I'm excited for but also nervous is that they're going to do right now they have a 6-year plan mapped out that's going to culminate in a big event. I would be excited about this if it is a Avengers or Age of Ultron style thing where it's like, it's not a world ending, like this is going to be the biggest thing to shake up the entire universe, but it's something that brings a lot of these characters together, maybe forms the Justice League for the first time. If that's what they're going for, I'm excited, but if they're trying to build up to like an end game thing, like they said,
that's the word I saw that got me nervous. Was that in the article at all?
Yeah, that was in one of the initial articles. I don't know if that's what Gunn said. I don't know if he meant on that scale. I think he just meant like it's going to be something that brings a lot of this stuff together.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. We don't know anything about it. We don't know what their initial plan is. So if it's something cool, that's awesome. If they're saying, "Hey, we're gonna do Crisis on Infinite Earths again in 6 years," then we're we're raising the red alarms, right?
So I guess like my question on that would be: did that start in 2024? Did that 6 years start in 2024, or does that 6 years start this year with Superman?
I don't think it starts because Gunn
it
has
starts
always said
this
Superman
year.
is the start.
So okay,
Creature
so,
Commandos came out at the very end of last year, and it was barely part of last year. So I think it just starts this year.
Yeah, so it just starts this year. Okay, yeah, because I was wondering about that, and I was like, yeah, but it doesn't necessarily worry me. It does make me a little bit more intrigued as to where they're going with this universe. But I mean, I guess tying it back to the main theme of the episode with Kingdom Come, they could do a whole Magog situation where something happens that and I know a theme of Superman is like hope and getting that hope back and keeping that hope when all hope seems lost in certain areas. So I mean, that might be what the event could potentially be. But I'm excited for sure to see what they do and how they tie in things like Luca Guadagnino's Sergeant Rock and James
They're not
Watkins'
going to.
Clayface, and how all these things connect to make one story. per se.
Honestly, if they did an approach of like, hey, we're going to bring in all these projects and they're all going to be their own distinct thing that you don't have to watch anything else to understand, like they've been talking about, and then 6 years that they do this like thing that just changes the landscape, whether that's Flashpoint isn't a good example, but you know, Flashpoint changes the landscape of the DC universe, something like that, and then you enter your next era of DC where it's like, this event changed the universe, here's how all these worlds are now. That's what I would like, not something that's
cool.
like, I don't need to see Batman, Clayface, Sergeant Rock, the Authority all on a team. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing.
that
It's like
seems
I don't
ridiculous.
see movies like Clayface and Sergeant Rock really tying into whatever this big culmination film is. Like I feel like Sergeant Rock is going to happen, and then probably not really ever be acknowledged again,
Yeah.
which is cool. I think that's kind of fun. That it's always kind of a part, you know, because you see it in Creature Commandos. It'll always have that link there. But I don't think it needs to be part of some grand plan, you know?
I think we're MCU brained with a lot of stuff. We're expecting all these
We are.
shared things to branch into something bigger, and it doesn't necessarily need to. And that's what I'm excited about, is that it doesn't need to. 'Cause I don't
correct me
want
if
it
I'm
to.
wrong, but Lanterns is supposed to introduce whoever the big bad is, correct?
That's what he
I
said
don't
when he
know.
first announced it.
If
Yeah,
that is,
what he said.
that's a rumor. If that's what came out. But
Well, yeah, that is what he said when he first announced the show in that
That's
big
what there's a-
video. Yeah, he was like yeah, Lanterns will be where we get, you know, the introduction of the big bad. So I think whatever is happening in this small town that Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan are investigating is because of whatever the main villain is doing.
Yeah. That's the thing where I don't even need a big bad. Like I don't need a Thanos for the DCU. I think the first event movie should just be focused on assembling your initial Justice League, your society, or whatever, and what does that look like in this
It could
era?
just be Sinestro.
Right. It could just be Sinestro. It could be,
Or
you know,
Parallax,
whatever
unfortunately.
that Loki level villain that
Yeah.
isn't super high caliber. I don't know. None of what they said worried me really. I think their
No.
overall approach with this meeting was just kind of being like, hey, we're working on all this stuff. Things come and things go. Obviously, some things are working out better in production, but they seem to be handling it in a way that's a lot different than the old DCU, where it's like the old DCU also put out a slate and then changed a bunch of things, but that was more like just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. This is more like, before we throw it at the wall, let's see if it sticks in general, like internally, and let's see
And
what...
I wouldn't say there was any like big bombshells out of this too. I think
No.
most of the news was expected, which is
even
good.
the animated shows people were excited about, but then they're like, oh, those are just like your standard run of the mill, which is what I want. I'm glad they're still doing that, but it was a good press conference, and I'm glad that I got updates on all this stuff, especially stuff that they hadn't talked about on an official level. But yeah, I don't know if you guys have any other closing thoughts. I think I about covered it.
I have never been more excited for comic book media, because if we do that whole 7 thing, you know, 7 releases, then that'll be 6 Marvel releases, 7 DC releases, and 1 or 2 Star Wars releases every single year. Hopefully, for Star Wars. every single year. I know Jackson made a
Yeah.
face. Well, hopefully, a Star Wars something movie releases because I want to experience Star Wars in the theater for the first time because I've never experienced Star
Oh,
Wars in
dude,
the
your
theater.
first Star Wars movie is gonna be The Mandalorian and Grogu. You're
Yeah,
cooked. I'm so sorry.
but
And they re-released The Force Awakens this year just for you.
I know,
It's been 10 years.
they need to. But I have never been more
Oh, that's
excited
tough.
as a comic book fan that we're in this stage where comic book movie media is just taking flight. You know, pun intended with Superman.
I'm really excited for the DCU. I think I'm more optimistic about this than the other two. Most of the other big franchises right now, because they're about to completely bone James Bond. Star Wars is going to be in the gutter very soon. Marvel's not doing too hot. I think Gunn has a real opportunity to kind of seize the market here. And also, most importantly, tell good stories. And I think that he's smart to go out and get filmmakers like Luda Guadagnino to tell these stories. You know, getting real auteur filmmakers to kind of come in and tell stories for DC Studios is a smart move, rather than kind of going out and getting people that can be controlled. You know, that's really what excites me.
It's something that DC has always done, which has been very filmmaker focused and
Yeah.
focusing on branching out. But now they have a plan, they have a shepherd, and I don't need them to be top dog. I don't need them to compete with all this stuff. I just need them to be consistent
Good.
to the level that brings people back and brings people back to the fandom that I've always been in and I've always loved. And I think that's going to happen very, very soon. But yeah,
Agreed.
thanks for a super long episode. If you stuck around to the end, I appreciate you.
Holy
Next
shit, we've
week,
been going for an hour and a half.
next week we are talking about a movie called Steel. It ties into Superman and it stars Shaquille O'Neal. So we're absolutely stoked to dive into that one. Thank you for exploring with us. We'll see you soon.
Bye bye.